Well, welcome back again this week to another analysis behind the news. It's a little bit of a continuation, if you will, of last week's where we divulged that George Romney helped raise money for Saul Alinsky, who was the man who wrote the book Rules for Radicals. And in addition to that, he helped form a lot of community action groups, and many of them were based on his Rules for Radicals. How to form community action groups for the left and move society towards the socialism by these community action groups. They became such organizations as ACORN, which no longer exists by that name, but it has been renamed. The same people that were involved are doing other things in community action, funded by the government, funded by foundations, and that sort of thing. And they were the ones in Chicago, because Saul Alinsky was a Chicago-based guy, and that's where they really formed a lot of this stuff initially. They're the ones that disrupted all of these Trump rallies, for instance. They've been organized to go out and disrupt these things. Even Bill Ayers, who was Obama's mentor, who was a communist terrorist who's never been sorry for anything that he ever did. That man was Obama's mentor. Now, he was even at the Trump rally with those demonstrators, disrupting the rally to the point where Trump called it off. Now, Trump is getting a lot of flack that it's his fault that he's got the violence at his rallies. I don't recall Trump asking the Communist Party or the Communist Revolutionary Party or any of these community action groups originally formed based on the Saul Alinsky tactics to come together and organize to disrupt his own rallies. And it's being done, of course, in the name of freedom of speech. It's freedom of speech for the demonstrators, but it's not freedom of speech for those who want to hear the speaker or the speaker himself or that sort of thing. Being rude and vile and disruptive is freedom of speech according to the media. And this is the way it's always been. I lived through this in the 60s and into the 70s. It was a common thing. It was, I can't belabor it, I've got to move on to make point after point, but believe me, there were a lot of things that the demonstrators would do that were very, very disruptive, very destructive of property, the safety of the individuals, and so on and so forth. And that is continuing on today. The thing about it is that a lot of times the newsmen themselves will prompt some of the violence. They arrested a man in Chicago, for instance, who was a newsman. Now, I have no idea whether he was guilty or innocent of the charges or the reason why he was handcuffed and detained by the police. But I can tell you, based on my own experience, I've had in one instance a newsman and his photographer run up to me and yell at me to hit a guy at a demonstration because I was dissatisfied with the materials that the man was passing out at this demonstration. It happened to be Nazi stuff. It was a Nazi newspaper called the Thunderbolt. And he was besmirching the people there and the speaker there with the idea that we're all a bunch of Nazis. And this always happens. You get the KKK and you get the Nazis coming out, all two or three of them, which the newsmen will photograph or video and then say, look, this is your typical participant in this kind of a rally. They're not the typical participant at all. They're there to besmirch the candidate or the people that are there or whatever it is, whether they're a candidate or a speaker or what have you. And so a lot of people get very angry at this. And I know I was angry at this Nazi. I did not like seeing what he was passing out. And I told him so in no uncertain terms. And so the newsman came up and started yelling in my ear, hit him, hit him, hit him, so they could get a photograph that they could put on the front page. Calmly, I turned to the newsman And I said, no, I'm not going to hit this guy. You just want a picture to put on the front page of your newspaper, and walked away. That's the kind of thing that some of these newsmen will do. Not all of them, by any chance. But there are a few that are very unethical, to put it mildly. I even know of individuals that were leaders in the communist movement as students, and not just the participants in these communist demonstrations, but the leaders of communist organizations, whose father, for instance, in one case, was the leader of a communist party in the state of Washington, and he went on, the son, to become a reporter on one of the Seattle newspapers. Within a couple of years, he was made city editor of this newspaper, a communist. So I know that those sorts of things exist within the news media. We can talk about it in generalities, but there are times when I know the specifics of these things happening. The thing is that something else that has been going on that's been bothering me a lot lately that I'd like to point out to you. You know, we have lighting in this room, for instance, that comes from two separate angles. It gets rid of the shadows on my face and under my eyes and nose and so on and so forth. But if they are a little bit unethical and they're trying to set a guy up, they will use lighting to make him look bad. And I've been noticing this a lot in relationship to Trump, of why he scowls so much into the camera. And I realized that it's being done because of the lighting. They place the lighting that makes it hard for him to see the interviewer, and so he kind of looks like this, and he squints his eyes. That is not a normal stance for anyone. And it's being done to kind of shut the light out from coming into his eyes and hurting his eyes. Now, when I was interviewed by 60 Minutes, they had one camera and one spotlight. The spotlight they put right over the head of the interviewer, and so it showed right into my face. And so I had to kind of come down like this and kind of look through the bottom of my eyebrows in order not to have pain from the light. It's that strong. And so what that does, it makes you look, it gives you a scowl. And it gives you a shadow under your eyes and your nose and your lips and your chin. And it's the same thing they did with Richard Nixon during this famous Nixon-Kennedy debates, which CBS later admitted they had done on purpose to make Nixon look bad. Now, I'm not going to say that Nixon was a great guy or a bad guy or vice versa in regards to Kennedy. I'm just talking about the lighting. CBS wanted to make Nixon look bad, so they set the lighting up to do just that. A lot of that is being done to these candidates, particularly Trump. And so when you notice that, start noticing how the lighting is involved in all the process. You can't tell particularly exactly anyway, because you're looking from it behind the camera instead of in front of the camera, looking back towards the light to be sure. But that is what it appears to be to me. And so we see these forces starting to come on to disrupt the guy they don't want to get elected president. And we're starting to see, for instance, I was just told by one of our research people this morning that Soros has given money to Kasich, that sort of thing. It's becoming quite obvious now, the line of demarcation between the left, the establishment, and the conservative wing of the people. And we're starting to see that the establishment and the left are coming together at the top to prevent certain people from being elected, and at the bottom in the streets preventing certain people from becoming elected. It's a sign of what's been going on. We may not have that direct link today between, say, Mitt Romney and the community action programs of a Saul Alinsky, but it was true in his father. George Romney helped finance Saul Alinsky, and now the fruit of that financing and the fruit of that organizing is being used in the elections of 2016. Start noticing these things as you start watching the rallies, the speeches. the debates, that sort of thing of these candidates. Until next week, we'll see you then.